Hi, I'm Greg Braxton with the Los Angeles Times calendar section. Earlier this year, Amazon Prime premiered a series called Bosch, based on the best-selling novels by Mike Connelly about a hard-edged veteran LAPD detective that has a unshakable code of ethics. Those books are phenomenally successful internationally, and now we have another success. Bosch has made an instant connection with viewers. Much of the credit for that success goes to its lead, Titus Welliver, who has struck gold in his first leading man role playing Harry Bosch. And we're here with Titus, and welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
What's your response to how Bosch has just taken off right off the bat? What were you expecting this, or?
I think it's always a crapshoot. You don't know, but given the success of Michael's books and the enormous fan base, one could only hope that that would also still resonate as a television show, and it appears to have done so and reached a whole new audience of people who were not familiar with Michael's books. So it's been...
What were your expectations? Were you nervous going into this?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a daunting task if you're going to portray a character who's, somewhat iconic in that genre, for sure. We all have our sort of prejudice and our preconceived ideas about what characters should look and sound like when we read a book. That being said, I had to sort of surrender to the fact that I wasn't going to please everyone and just had to kind of jump in. And the response has been very welcoming. I don't read the Amazon on-site reviews. I'm sure there's some people out there that think that it was the greatest, miscasting in the history of all things. But my understanding is that people really have embraced my playing Harry, and it would seem that the success of the show sort of has landed on its own.
How would you describe Harry? What would be your description of Harry?
Well, he's really the quintessential anti-hero, and rather than, I mean, he has certain qualities of that genre. He is a tough guy. He's very, very driven. Connelly calls him a grinder, and he takes nothing for granted. But he really is an anti-hero, and he's damaged to a certain degree. The man that he has become has been informed by this, deeply sort of tragic and hard childhood that he's had to endure, and the loss of his mother at an early age. But it's really defined him. And so I think Harry is a guy whose moral compass is completely intact. He may bend the rules, but he never crosses the ethical lines. He's not beating confessions out of suspects. He's not planting evidence. He's not a racist. He's none of those things. He's kind of the guy that we root for because he is flawed. Mm-hmm. He's human, so it makes him very attainable, and there's something almost likable about that quality in him.
Now, how familiar were you with the books before you got offered the role?
I'd only read one book, and it had been many, many years before. But of course, when I read the script, I said I knew exactly who he was, and rather than sort of going back and picking the book, I just read the script, and it's a really good realization. Those things don't always translate well. I mean, there's always the temptation, I think, to sort of sex it up and put him in a fancy suit or give him a car, and multiple girlfriends, and it's not broken, so there's no need to deviate or try to fix it or amp it up.
So when you got this project, and the books have been popular for so long, but yet Harry's not really described physically in the books, and the fans of the novels of Michael have their own preconception of how Bosch is supposed to look, how he's supposed to act. So how did you grapple with that expectation versus what you wanted to bring to the characterization?
I just really sort of jumped in. I had ideas about him just because I was able to read a few more books before we started production. So in the process of trying to, create the character in sort of a sandstorm, because there was not a great deal of time for me to do that. That what I gathered was sort of, he's a very simple guy in his likes and his dislikes. He's very, very clear. And so one of the things that I would say was a deviation is that Harry wears a suit in the books, and Harry has a mustache in a fair amount of the books. I didn't have time to grow a mustache, so that was absent from this. And I felt that Harry was a guy who would not spend a lot of time on his clothing, that he would probably have, several shirts and several pairs of pants, and he just kind of gets out of bed in the morning, takes a shower, and throws his clothes on. So I asked Michael if it would be okay to nix the suits, but have them present when he was doing a notification to a family, and of course when he's in court, that he would follow that protocol. But in his daily life, that was not something that, and Michael was fine with that.
Now, so many people know you from a variety of roles, and you've been in Sons of Anarchy. You've been in basically every movie and television series ever made. Lost, The Good Wife. Your credits are so extensive. The thing about Bosch is that you have to communicate so much without a whole lot of dialogue, which I think would be a real challenge for an actor.
Well, he is a man of few words. I mean, when Harry speaks in the books, there is a lot of sort of internal dialogue that's, of course, expressed in the narrative, but is unspoken. And that was something that I really felt strongly about, that we maintain the integrity of that quality of Harry. And Michael and Eric and Henrik and the powers that be agreed, thankfully, with that, because we find Harry many times throughout the series alone, being contemplative. There is no dialogue. There is no noir voiceover narration of, I was on my third beer and my 10th cigarette when this dame,
right,
which is great. And I love that. But, I think if this was a network show, there would be some sort of an expression of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the character is so strong off the page that it's really sort of about taking the circumstances in which Harry is existing in that moment and just sort of being contemplative about that. And hopefully that translates to the audience. I think it does. But that was something that I felt strongly about holding on to, because as too often we're not given the benefit of the doubt of having a modicum of intelligence as an audience, that everything must be spelled out, and we're given a diagram. So that's been something that several people have said to me, that they actually really enjoy those moments, because it sort of lands with them in that moment, and they feel that it's him kind of being private and public, that only the audience is experiencing that with him. So if it's effective, then I'm all in support of that.
Do you have to get into a certain kind of head before doing a scene or coming to the set each day, because Harry is so troubled and he's, as you say, he's very damaged? What is your preparation to get into his head?
Well, I'm not an actor, and that my process, I don't inflict my process on everyone. I don't need to be called by the character's name or anything like that. I mean, as I said, the playwright's done a really good job. So for me, it's really about learning the material and then just sort of jumping in and seeing how the scene unfolds. I mean, I certainly will analyze the text and have a sense of where I would like to go, but there's a lot to be said for not over rehearsing and overdoing it, because then it gets a little bit stale. So in that way, there is a bit of, it feels almost like guerrilla filmmaking.
Yeah.
We rehearse, really, we do blocking rehearsals for the camera, and then we just come in and we shoot it. And so for me, the hardest part, I think, is after the day is complete, particularly if I've been dealing with stuff that's heavy, how to kind of let that go and go to sleep. Because you know, for those 15, 16 hours of the day, it's very, very intense and very, very focused. And then I get home and the crickets are chirping and my wife and daughter are asleep. And so it's just trying to find a way to kind of wind down from that. But I don't, you know, walk around with a fake gun or carry my badge when I'm not working. Yes, none of those things.
Relief to a lot
That
of
would be
people.
good.
We have some questions, I think, from some viewers who want to know some things about you, like what about you personally forms your connection with Bosch? What about your past or your personality really informs your connection with Harry?
Well, you and I talked about this
Right.
before, because I have sustained several personal tragedies in my life.
If you
loss
could-
of siblings.
Right.
My late wife passed away from cancer at a young age. But I'm not one who, as I know many actors who do choose to sort of pull from their personal experiences to inform a performance. I can't do that, because for me that's not really, then I'm not acting. I'm sort of reliving something that's, you know, profound and troubling for me. So I just use my imagination. I think some of the similarities are, I don't really suffer fools. I tend to not have a very good filter when expressing myself. I'm at times maybe direct to a fault. And something that I don't know that is necessarily directly related to me, but Harry is a character that doesn't really have an inherent desire to be liked. It's not that he's rude or he's nasty or he's not a curmudgeon, but Harry is sort of this is me, take me as I am.
And that's a little I would think that's a little challenging too, because even though we're rooting for Harry and he's the detective you want working for you, and you're the victim of a crime, sometimes his hard edge really grinds on people, even the people closest to him.
Yes.
And that's to read that on a page is one thing. To actually see that played out visually is kind of striking. And you get, the viewer can get kind of irritated with this guy.
I think so. But I'm, you know, it is a warts and all thing. I mean, look, I am. My father used to say that I was the only bull that he knew that carried around his own china shop. So I suppose, you know, perhaps I bring my own weather system with me, which is not to say that I'm moody. But sometimes I think I don't deflect things. I take them on. I take them on a little bit too much. I allow it to penetrate me. And so perhaps I'm overreactive sometimes. That would definitely be a criticism of my children and my wife, where they kind of go, my sons are constantly saying, chill, which it has the complete opposite effect on me.
Really?
Yeah. And chillax was the other one. The first time I heard that, I went, okay, you can chillax in your room with the door closed, and I'll let you know when it's safe to come out. But I identify with that because, you know, we all, I think everyone does have sort of a desire to be liked. You know, I think there are very few people that come into a room and say, let me see how many people I can offend. But there's something sort of liberating in that I sort of have a perverse joy in playing Harry, that he's a guy who kind of comes in and just does what he has to do. And if he hurts your feelings, it's no harm, it's no foul, but this is me.
Wow.
That's kind of fun.
It's cool. You've done so many, somebody else wants to know, before, you've done so many things. Before Bosch, what were you mainly known as or what would people respond to you mostly for? What project or what film?
Well, that's a little bit difficult because there was a period where I was doing sort of living this almost schizophrenic career life. I was shooting at one point The Town, the film with Ben Affleck, and shooting Lost, and shooting Sons of Anarchy, and shooting The Good Wife. So I would shoot in Boston for a couple of weeks and hop on a plane, fly to Hawaii, shoot 3 scenes from Lost, then stop off on the way back towards Boston and LA, shoot an episode or some scenes for Sons of Anarchy, then go back to Boston for a couple more weeks, take a train down to New York, shoot an episode of The Good Wife. And those shows, because everything was happening at the same time, and The Man in Black and Glenn Childs and Jimmy O'Fallon were all sort of, I was fortunate that they were these kind of iconic,
very strong,
out front,
very
strong,
distinctive
characters that I don't know who I'm most associated with in that. But then there are the diehard Deadwood fans who still are talking about Deadwood and asking me when we're going to make the Deadwood reunion, which I think that boat sailed, or I should say that horse rode off.
That horse has gone off.
In 3 seasons, I rode my horse when I rode into town, and I rode my horse when I rode out of town at the end of it. So not a lot of horseback riding. Sorry, that's a huge digression. I get analogous with a horse,
right?
And of course, it goes sideways. So, it's just one of those things where those characters, because they were all so, simultaneous, that when someone would start talking to me about something, I would say, "Oh, I'm not. Which one are you talking about?" I would get very kind of lost.
Speaking of Lost, do people come up and ask you what the ending of Lost meant, and what was that still? Yeah. I mean, they're still asking.
And I think people will be talking about that. I mean, Lost is kind of like Gunsmoke, and that people will be revisiting that show for many, many years to come. I think its place in television history is pretty firm. Everyone has a different, level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the way that the show closed. And I was fine with it, but I wasn't invested in the same way as the people who had watched from day one until the end. And I didn't, in the process of doing that, when Elizabeth Sarnoff and some of the other writers would want to give me some information about the whole thing, I would always sort of say, I don't want to know about it. I just want to be able to kind of do it. And in that way, when I went back and binge watched all of it, the sort of unfolding of the story for me was really, really rewarding, because I didn't really know, and it didn't inform my performance at all. I was able to just kind of be present in those scenes.
And did you understand the end?
I did, in an obtuse way, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't mind. I don't think you have to always put a period at the end of a sentence. So I rather liked the nature of how it ended.
What is it like to be, after your career, what is it like to be number one on the call sheet and be the guy who's in almost every scene, and especially since a lot of your characters have been supporting characters? What is it like to be sort of the leader? What kind of experience is that for you?
I approach everything with the same level of commitment and intensity. So if it's coming in and doing 2 scenes in a film, or doing Bosch, where I'm in everything, it just means more hours. That's really, in that regard, I have a more collaborative relationship in the process of shooting Bosch, which is a gift. I mean, there are many producers and creators who you would have an idea and they would say, "That's lovely. It's not going to work on this show, but that's a great idea. Perhaps you could go and write your own pilot." And Michael and Eric and all are very, we have an ongoing dialogue. So it's, in that regard, it's different, but it really just means more time. And, I mean, am I perhaps a bit more invested because it's what I'm doing? it's the center of my focus. In that regard, it is different, but it's, you know, I never half-ass it. I don't know if you can say ass. Oops.
Oops. Oh well.
As my daughter would say,
Well,
ass is in the Bible. It's a donkey. Yeah, that's how she defends her use of bad language.
Bosch films all over the place, different locations downtown, just really good representation of LA. Are you from Los Angeles?
No, I'm from New York, but I've lived here for a very long time, off and on. So when we go to those places, and of course, LA is such a character in the series.
Right. Does it make you feel more connected to LA since you've been playing this character?
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is Harry's world, and you know, he's Hollywood Homicide. He's not in the Palisades division.
Right.
He's not out there. So that was covered really, really well by Entourage. For me, it's kind of funny because being a kid growing up on the East Coast and one who watched a lot of television, when I go back and look at shows like Mission Impossible and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or you know, the Brady Bunch and things like that, for me, it's really funny because as a child watching it, I always thought, wow. Of course, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., you were in Siberia or someplace, and it was Runyon Canyon.
Right.
But to go, and of course, the Batcave, that always
Right.
gets me. That's I've been rewatching the original '60s series lately, and every time I've walked through that Batcave.
Is it hard for you to get into? I mean, going back and looking at those shows, remembering how they were as a kid and seeing them now as an adult.
No, it's funny because they still kind of resonate, and I guess that shows you how much I've evolved as an adult, that I'm still titillated by The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Batman and Rat Patrol and all these things. I'm just still 9 years old, sitting in my pajamas with a bowl of cereal.
Well, how cool.
To a certain degree.
How cool. Someone wants to know, who is your personal hero?
My personal hero. Well, I would say first and foremost, my father. The gifts that he gave me as far as my love of film. I mean, the reason that I'm an actor is because my parents were both cinephiles, so they took me to the see films all the time. So from the time I was a very small child, I was constantly engaged with film, some totally age inappropriate, but nonetheless, it absolutely impacted me and was the driving force in my decision to become an actor. But I would say David Milch who is a surrogate father.
Wow.
To me.
And David Milch is
the writer-creator of some little shows like Deadwood and NYPD Blue and Hill Street Blues and Luck and some of that stuff. I just learned, I think they're my heroes because they've taught me so much. I mean, sort of everything I know about anything, I learned from these two men. And so they are my heroes. If you ask who my heroes are as far as actors or inspiration, I would, people sort of immediately leap to Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and Brando, which that's sort of a given. But I would say the actor that I learned the most from in observing his work was Toshiro Mifune.
Well, really?
And it was actually when I was cast as Bosch, I went back and watched a lot of Mifune's early films like Yojimbo and Stray Dog, because there's a kind of economy, particularly because with a lot of Mifune's characters, he, like Harry Bosch, there's a lot of internal stuff going on with him, but it's not connected to the spoken word. And so I really wanted to sort of see, how does he do that? Because it was something that I think always drew me to his performances, that there was an economy, but you got so much from observing him. So you ask me what time it is, I tell you how to make a watch.
So Bosch is going to go into season 2. When are you going to start filming, and what can you tell us about what we're going to see in season 2?
We start 1st of August, and in this season, we're pulling from 3 books: The Drop, Trunk Music, and The Last Coyote. Probably the smallest bit is from The Last Coyote. Now, those who know the books immediately will say, well, it's this, and this. Because of things as they occur in the books, chronologically, things have had to be somewhat reconfigured. But I will say that if you thought Harry had a full plate in the first season, he has a very full plate this time. The stakes are even higher. His ex-wife Eleanor and his daughter Maddie are placed in harm's way, and Harry is dealing with the mob. And we're also coming back after, when we come into the beginning of season 2, Harry's been on suspension for 6 months. So we're coming back, and the big questions are, many fans on Twitter and the like have been asking, where is he? What's he been doing? Well, these questions will be answered, but you have to imagine that after the experience of the confrontation, the ultimate confrontation with Raynard Waits, and the fact that Waits was able to place that woman between the two of them, would be something that Harry would obsess over.
Right.
Would be analytical in what part of my edge wasn't sharp enough that I didn't get, did I not get in there quick enough? Am I slower than I was?
Mm-hmm.
How would he utilize that time? He says, I'm putting this place in my rear view and I'm going to go spend time with my daughter. So we know that he's been spending time with Maddie, but has he been in Las Vegas the whole time? What else has he been doing? So these are all questions that will be answered. And I think it's, get ready, because it'll be a good ride. It'll be a really good ride.
Well, at the premiere of Bosch, when Mike got up and talked, and he said that he's been so fiercely protective of this character through his books, and he said, but Harry Bosch doesn't really belong to me anymore. It belongs to Titus Welliver, which I think was,
You're gonna make me cry.
The ultimate compliment.
He got me with that one.
Yeah, he got you.
It's and I am now, deeply protective of Harry as well. I feel, closer to him than I've ever felt to a character before, and very protective of him. And so I guard him with the same ferocity that Michael has, and his expressing that was, for me, deeply moving. And but as I always say to him, the gift that you've given me in entrusting me with breathing life into Harry is unlike any that I've ever been given before. So it's exciting. It's very exciting. I've missed Harry. I mean, I've taken this time off in between the seasons to be with my family and to sort of decompress. But I really miss him. I can't wait to jump back in. Or maybe he's never left and I'm just completely unaware of it.
Well, we're going to look forward to season 2, and congratulations on a wonderful job playing Bosch. And thank you for tuning in. For more information, please contact us or at latimes.com.